Welcome back to the Revenue Problem Solvers podcast, where we look to crack the code on growing your business by tackling the challenges that keep revenue leaders up at night. I'm Carl Ortmans, and on today's episode, we're going to dive into a topic that I've actually never talked about, and it's the topic of events. Now, today's podcast is sponsored by Virtual Causeway. Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Website traffic is down. Your leads likely have dried up, and the traditional demand gen, I don't want to say is dead, but it's kind of dead. AI has changed everything. People now learn about your company through LLMs, and you'd actually never know it. Virtual Causeway helps you flip the script. They don't just chase leads, they create conversations with pre qualified buyers who are ready to talk. You need to break into a new vertical, fill seats for events, book quality meetings. They become your team's extension. Check them out at virtualcauseway.com and mention the show for a special rate. So before we jump in, here's why today's conversation matters. Imagine implementing just one of today's strategies and watch your revenue metrics shift within weeks, not months. That's exactly why we built this podcast. Let's talk about the challenges that others have faced and how they've solved it. As I like to say, success leaves clues. And we're going to look to highlight those clues for you today. So I got to tell you, this one I'm pretty pumped about. My guest today is Jay Menashe. And so the context, so Jay and I met as part of the Pavilion group about 4 years ago when we went through CMO school together. We had such an amazing group and cohort that we continue actually to talk monthly. So Jay isn't just knowledgeable, he's the expert for all things events, in my humble opinion. He's spent his entire career in the event space with companies like Skyline Exhibits, MC2, Jack Morton, EDE, and now he's the head of new business with Exhibitus. Not only is Jay incredibly passionate about this space, and if you don't believe me, just follow him on LinkedIn. You'll see what I mean. Every day he's talking something cool. He's also an awesome person. We talk business, life, and hockey on a very regular basis. Even though he's a Rangers fan and I'm a Penguins fan, we do get along well. I've had the honor of becoming friends with Jay, and even though we've actually never met in person, we talk regularly. And this one today, like I say, it's a true honor for me to have you here. Welcome to the podcast, Jay, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Awesome. So let's kick off. And if you can share with the audience a little bit about your world. So, what industries, verticals do you work with today? What are like the selling motions? What size companies do you typically work with?
Sure. So, let's start with industry verticals. I'm typically talking to tech companies, healthcare, more specifically in the medical device space, and mainly fast-growing companies. We're looking for people that, as they quote unquote recession-proof, which we all know is not any companies or any industries anymore. In terms of company size, we're typically in that 150 million sales rev plus or 150 employees. And yeah, again, it's people that are looking to make a difference in in-person events and know that the channel is worth the investment.
Nice. Okay. So how we got to this topic today is, Jay and I talk regularly, and I ask, like I do with everybody, what's a successful revenue initiative you've led or an existing challenge that you're solving? And it really kind of became clear. And it's an area, like I say, that I'm really excited to talk about because events are a topic I'll say that I've gone to many times, being on the side of like paying for them, as a leader, or helping to create an experience. But I'll tell you, I'm just an amateur, so I don't know this world well. So maybe if we could start here in the world of using demand gen events as a demand gen or lead gen strategy, what would you say is the first thing for people to consider for somebody that's planning an event and say, hey, if you're going to if you're going to create this event, if you're going to go to this event, etc., consider this thing as part of your demand gen strategy? What would that be?
So I think the first thing when you're going to events, and well, of course, it's cliche to say, it's like, think about why you're going there in the first place. What is your objective? And I'd say one of the big unlocks I had in my career is taking my sales brain and converting it to marketers. So talking to them about, you have to talk about pipeline and revenue at events. You can't just talk about, oh, it felt good or it looked great. And I think changing the conversation from like a feeling to a fact is really one of the biggest and easiest changes you could make. And yeah, that's typically where I start the conversation is like, why are you there? And how does it ladder up to the ultimate company goals?
That's it. Feeling to fact. When you bring that up and you say, you have a feel, is it sort of like you have a feeling that you want to go there, but what are the facts that you're looking to take away with it? Like, how do you use those words?
So to use the feeling specifically, it's like, you go to a show. Let's say Dreamforce, it's a massive event. Everybody knows about it, or AWS reInvent. It's like, oh, wow, we got like 8,000 badge scans. We got all these leads. It felt so good. It's like, cool. So what happens with those badge scans after the event? Or how do you know that those are even good leads if you're just scanning the badge? Like, what are you doing with that? And we started forcing people to, it's like, hey, we know you're going to do the gimmicky thing. You're going to play the plinko game or play mini golf or something that I'll call silly, but it's like, if you're going to create this experience, why can't you ask them something while you're doing this? So whatever your sales motion is, whether it's bant or medpic or medic or whatever, incorporate those questions right up front. And it's
Mm.
it's casual. It takes what, a minute to 30 seconds to a minute to ask quick questions to be like, oh, cool, here's the thing, be on your way. Or, hey, here's the thing, you should really talk to John over here. He could show you, answer some of your questions and show you a little bit more about how we are solving that exact problem that you're having. And I think that subtle change where it's like you're just asking them 3 or 4 questions. You're not holding them hostage there for
Hmm.
25 minutes and forcing them into a demo.
Yeah, that's interesting. Of like during the event, we've seen those. I mean, I've certainly have seen the experience of where you go and people are just coming for the stuff to take home to their kids, and they don't really so. And actually, as we're talking about this and listening to you say, I think there's maybe a structure in today's conversation that I haven't even considered until listening to you. It feels like there's a pre, a during, and a post conversation that you likely have with customers. And so Jay's showed me some stuff that he's done with like Monster Energy, which is like off the charts cool of the things that they do. So is it fair for me to ask you in that like maybe for the conversation, the pre, during, post? Pre-event, what are the things that you talk to the marketers or the marketing teams or the companies that you work with? What are the things that you're really trying to highlight or trying to solve to build that experience for the event before anything else happens?
So I think actually you don't even talk about it as pre, during, post. Obviously, we address all three of those phases, but you have to think of any event as an integrated marketing program within itself.
Hmm.
So, or an integrated, account-based selling program, however you want to put it, for your audience. I'm sure that's more resonates. But yeah, we're trying to schedule meetings ahead of time. If you're heading to an event, you shouldn't be just showing up for those 3 days or 4 days and just be like, all right, let's hope everybody comes to our space. You should be pre-scheduling. I don't know, depending on the industry, this varies, but between 60 and 80% of your meetings should be scheduled before you even show up on site. So on the pre-show, it's like talk to people, tell them why you're going to be there, speak to their specific needs. One I will tell you, one of my biggest pet peeves is like, "Hey, we're booth 417. Come on by." Well, why? Why are you coming by? What are you going to do for me? Besides, great, you're there. You're going to give me this, trinket that I'm either going to give to my kids or throw in the garbage, maybe both. And it's really thinking through. It's like, why are you inviting people there? Like using that personalization. You know the audience, and if you don't know the audience, well, you probably shouldn't be going. But reach out to the show organizers, and they'll give you information to speak to them. Like they know why people come to this event. They send out surveys, before, during, and after themselves to get this kind of data to help make these more successful for their exhibitors that are showing up or their sponsors showing up.
I mean, that is an interesting one for I think for people to consider is if as you're going there, book 2/3 of your meetings or even more, 2/3 to 3/4 of your meeting time before you even arrive or attend. So when you're talking to these customers and you're giving them, you're talking about the experience in the event, is this something that you suggest to them to say, "Hey, by the way, before you go, here's a roadmap." I'll just for lack of
Mhm.
a better term, here's a roadmap. 10 weeks out, you have this done. 8 weeks out, you do this. 6 weeks out, you launch your ABM campaign to start your meeting creation. Is that part of the conversation at all?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say we're more talking to them 6, 8, 10 months out. It depending how far ahead of time they start planning. But typically that's when we'll start those conversations. And yeah, we'll create a whole touch point map to exactly the dates you mentioned. It's at least 10 to 12 weeks out. We're starting to think through like what is that plan and when do you launch it. 6 weeks is kind of that sweet spot. I mean, if it depends if you're running your own event versus like having a space at an event. But
Mhm.
about 6 weeks out, you don't want to reach out to people before then. And even 6 weeks out, scheduling something for 6 weeks from now, it's like people are going to forget. You're going to have to continue to stay on them even to make sure they show up. But yeah, you should have a plan in place for at least 6 weeks out. Just try to drum up that interest for sure.
So something you just said that I don't think I even considered. Is there a difference if you said Dreamforce, so just use that one as example. Salesforce is going to have their own strategy. They have people coming versus I'm going to be an attendee or I'm going to be an exhibitor at Dreamforce. What does that conversation sound like for the two different ones from a demand gen perspective? How are they talking to you about creating those experiences?
So, I mean, if you're a sponsor at an event and you're just showing up with your own, let's say, your own footprint there, it's a lot easier. None of it's easy, I will say that. But if you're running the event, you're not just trying to acquire sponsors for the event, you're also acquiring people to buy the pass for the event. So you have to start way ahead of time. And one of the Julius Solaris is really big event influencer. He talks about registration numbers are so down 6 months out, and people have to really think about their strategies and how they're getting people to sign up, because it's just, I think I forget the exact stat, so I'm not going to even pretend to make it up this time. I make up a lot of percentages, but I'll do that later on. um, but within the last like 3 weeks before an event, that's when a lot of people are signing up now, and it's like you can't plan anything when people
Mm,
are signing up that close to the event, food and beverage, let alone hotel registrations, because you have a room block that you have reserved, that type of stuff. So it's like, yeah, you got to think about like real ways to entice people to sign up ahead of time. And it's not just about saving money anymore, because it's a difference of usually a few $100s, $1,000. And let's be honest, I'd like to think everybody treats their company money like their own, but they don't. So
mm.
what is a special experience you can offer them that if they sign up 3 months ahead of time, Pavilion is actually a good example here. We were all at the go to market conference 2 weeks ago, and they offered on the spot, if you signed up before the end of the conference, you get not only a 3 month saving on your annual membership, but we'll give you a free pass for next year's go to market. So that's like easily $1,000 in savings right there. And it was smart. I know I and bunches of other people signed up right on the spot because like, hey, I'm coming anyway. I might
Mhm.
as well sign up now. So it also makes them look good for next year, because it's like, look at how many registrations they already have going in to 2026 before they've even, they have their venue locked down, but they haven't launched anything other than that.
Yeah, that's one that isn't that one I've seen many times of, as an exhibitor, I'll say it as an exhibitor, you're about to leave and they're on you to secure your spot for next year and
Yeah,
ensure and we'll give you a special rate and etcetera. Like, that does seem to be a bit of a tactic for the show creators or the show owners
for
to
sure.
and I think you're sort of buying your space and your commitment, right? So then okay, there's like you said, there's a lot to do. There's food and beverage, there's hotels, there's all these things, and so how do you get ahead of it? On the when you start to create the events, how far ahead should you really be thinking to create an event or attend an event? Maybe I think there's two different tracks. If I want to create my own event, how long should I be thinking ahead of time? Versus I'm just going to attend an event, how
Mhm.
much time should I think about and to prepare in some sort of meaningful fashion?
So, and in this case, when you say attend, you mean like be a sponsor, show up with a footprint, and like build a booth and that type of thing, right?
Yeah, so I'll say use a different. I'm gonna build my own Dreamforce. I'm just going to attend as a sponsor to Dreamforce.
Building your own dream force, that is obviously a different scale, but I'll simplify it. If you're putting on a first of a kind event in your industry, booking a venue, and it depends, of course, how many people you're looking to get. If you're looking to get 500, 1,000 people, you're going to want to book your venue at least a year in advance. And actually, that these days is short. And it also, it always depends on what city you're going to. If you're going to like a tier one city, you might be thinking more like 18 months to 2 years. I know companies that booked a venue for 2029 already. So
2029.
yeah, well, and there's cities like Austin where they knocked down the convention center, so it's like meeting space is really reduced because of that. So people also want to time it for when the new convention center is built. So it's like they're literally 3 to 4 years out. And cities like Vegas where you think they have unlimited meeting space, unlimited limited convention space, it's like, yeah, it's literally booked up years in advance.
Hmm. Wow.
Now for a show where you're just showing up, and I'm sorry, I just cut you
Go
off.
ahead, please go.
Um, yeah, you can design and build a booth. I mean, in an ideal world, you're giving a partner like us at least, I'd say 4 to 6 weeks. 4 is even a little light sometimes to, have a conversation, figure out, all right, why are you going? Who's your audience? What are you trying to communicate? All of that stuff. And then of course the checklist, like, hey, do you need like meeting space? How many demos do you need? All the, the what of the
Mhm.
event. That process should take 4 to 6 weeks. Hopefully you're giving people a chance to meet with you, not only that one time to download that all that information. For me, I really like that there's a midterm step where it's like, hey, we got all this information, we put it on paper. Here's kind of what we're thinking. Here's like the flow of the idea. We came up with a theme for your space. Where we came up with a structural idea. What are you thinking here? And then you give us another like week, 10 days, 2 weeks to finalize that concept, price it out, of course, and then present the full solution to you. So
Mm.
that alone can be 4 to 6 weeks. So I would say you should give yourself at least 4 to 6 months ahead of time if you want to, and this is, I'm not talking about like a 10 by 10 or an inline booth exhibit. I'm talking like 20 by 40, 30 by 40, and the bigger stuff like big island custom exhibit type
Mm.
stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense to me because those are I've seen all kinds of where people bring full out cars into an event, or they built a restaurant. And so they bring
Mhm.
you in to say, "Oh, have a coffee and a drink or a sandwich on us." Or if you go over to like into Europe, one of the I don't know, have you done an event in Europe by chance?
I personally haven't, but we did. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. There's on the automation side, there's a really big automation event, and I'm drawing a blank on what it's Hamburg the Hamburg Fair, I think. Anyways, whatever it's called, but it's a different experience. There's obviously um, a different culture there. So you go and you'll sit and you'll actually have a beer together
Hmm.
in the booth, and you'll sit down and have a proper, hey, come sit down, have a beer, we'll talk, we'll do these different things. Some of the automation ones have had robotic arms do certain. I've had one where I had a robotic arm hand me uh, a glass of draft that they took the cup, put it onto one of the kegerators that bottom fills the beer, if you've seen those, and then it
Hmm.
hands it to you, and you're like, this is
Yeah.
freaking cool. But those are the experiences that you remember going to the show. And so I have to think that when you're talking to them, is that one of the biggest things you talk to people when they're creating these bigger shows? Like, what's that like I remember moment for the show? Is that really part of that strategy so you can so they build that into their demand gen?
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk about it quite a bit at Exhibit. It's, story before structure. Whereas in the old days, it's like, I mentioned it before. It's like, what do you need in your booth? Oh, cool. You want a hanging sign. You need a meeting room. You need a couple demo stations. You need a semi-private meeting area. Like, yes, that is all important. The functional needs of your space are always going to be important. But the reality is, it's like, I want to know the story you're trying to tell. Again, coming back to the objectives, why are they coming to see you? What
Mm,
problem are you solving for them? And that is really where the conversation starts. And yeah, you want to create something to get them hands on. Like, I know for myself, when I'm learning something new, you can tell me about it all day long until I actually jump into it and get to do it myself. None of it's going to stick. So it's like, not only what is that story, but okay, like, how do we bring that story together in a memorable way that's not just like, cool, I'm going to show you this demo that's a PowerPoint on this screen right here that, you could do that over Zoom. And I'm sorry, but as much as you and I have, funny enough, never met in person, have a very good relationship,
yeah.
when you're in person, that is not the way to use your time.
Right. Yeah, and some of those times you kinda get stuck into, like, "Let me just show you the demo," or you get the one that was it when Yeti cups, like the Yeti mugs, you were becoming popular, is if yeah,
My
see
branded Yeti mug right here.
See, there you go. As you get into some of the and maybe for that branded Yeti one, you had to have a discussion or you had to go through a demo, and then they gave you the nice gift versus the let me scan your badge and carry on, and you can go. But anyways, story before structure. That's really, I mean, that's a nugget that I think I'll take out of this. So so let's talk, if we move from there into sort of the during, because the demand gen, like you talked about, having a lot of your meetings created already while you're at the show, how are you suggesting or talking to others about that demand gen capture? And so is it a, hey, do the badge scan, do
Mhm.
these things, book the meetings? Like, what are some of the best companies doing now from a demand gen side with events so that they walk out of it and say, hey, look, I spent $50,000 on this event. I built $3 million in pipeline, and we saw 1 million of it close. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up. But what are those companies doing to say, this is how we're going to approach the pipeline build so that it pays for the event and also buys us some more information and leads?
So I will also say events, it's really hard. A lot of people focus on like that one touch or last touch, first touch attribution, and events are typically a part of the story. Sometimes it is that first touch, sometimes it is that last touch, but typically it's in somewhere in the middle and not one or the other. And yes, you need to have badge scanners, but not just to scan every single person that comes within 3 feet of your booth, because you're going to get a lot of unqualified leads that way, and your sales team is never going to trust what you're giving them ever again. So, it goes back to the beginning of what I said, making sure you're asking them even one qualifying question to get some kind of information to pass along to somebody that's going to call them after the show.
Mhm.
Or and you have these devices, whether it's your own personal phone that you're using as a lead retrieval device, or you rent it from the show or a third party provider. You can get different ones and designate them to different zones of your booth, so you know, hey, which demo is more popular if you have a designated spot for this specific demo of a product. Or you have a theater space and like, hey, that's a great place for somebody to sit down for 5, 10, 15 minutes, not typically that long at an event, but and you scan all those people, but you know it's for the theater, and those might not be qualified leads because typically you're enticed to sit at a theater presentation to get, again, a thing. So
Mm.
it's like, I would say that is a really good way by just designated different devices for different parts of the booth, and obviously knowing which ones those are after the show. And just making sure you're asking the right questions and filling in that lead retrieval info. Something I do advise, and I don't know how many people take me up on this, and coming from formerly an individual contributor, not sending salespeople to shows. And I think sending SDRs to man, let's say the front of the booth and handle like welcoming people, because an SDR or a BDR can qualify someone very quickly. That is like 99% of their job is like asking those questions and then figuring out where to route them after that. And then, yes, of course, have some salespeople in your booth because most of the time they're pretty charismatic, but give them a very specific job. Don't just be like, hey, hang out here, wait for someone to talk to you. Like, you have to give people something to do. But the other portion of people I like to have there, and this title changes for different industries, but like a solutions engineer. So you have
Mm.
the SDR to ask them those quick questions to qualify and figure out where they should go. And then you have the solutions engineer that can really go deep on like giving that demo without feeling like these people are being sold. Because I don't know if you've heard this before, but nobody likes to feel like they're being sold, but everybody likes to buy.
I have heard that before, and I
Yes.
probably have used that exact line. So on the strategy side, I really like this because I'm also a believer of send BDRs and SDRs to it does a number of things in my opinion. It creates some
Mhm.
experience, that face to face. How do they follow people? But also SDRs and BDRs are really hungry and will kind of carry on. So you talked about the roles. So SDRs are going to be. It sounds like, tell me if I'm way off. Those are your greeters, and those are the people to sort of direct inside the booth. So if we want to call them, I don't know, maybe the greeter is a bad analogy, but they're your greeters, and they kind of say, "Here you go." Um, then you have the AEs, and the AEs, are they there to meet with those 60 to 80% of the meetings that are already set? And so they're
Mhm.
getting face time and they're expanding and they're going to do different market research and try to find different customers. And then the SEs are the ones that are translating what you do to them so that they understand from a technical perspective, because there's my experience is there is going to be that person that is going to want to know the technical components of it, and they're going to want to know it right now, and you may never get them back again, but you have to have a good answer. So I guess that's the question of what are the roles of the folks, and maybe here's another one. Does marketing go? And what's their role?
Yeah. First of all, marketing definitely goes. They're in charge, whether they are feeling like they're in charge or not. They're the ones who put it all together. They're the ones who are typically leading the charge on the design of the space and the flow and figuring all these things out. And of course, the branding and making it feel good. Even though I said facts are more important, it still has to feel good.
Yeah.
But you said it a little bit a while ago about BDRs and not calling them greeters. I actually would call them greeters because if you think
Oh,
about it, and I know you and I have talked about the book Unreasonable Hospitality.
yes.
Well, there's already a familiarity. If they booked a meeting with this person for the AE, they can connect those dots immediately. It's like, you know what time they're coming. You hopefully will know what they look like. Thank you to LinkedIn. So you can, make that eye contact, like, hey, Jeff, so nice to see you. I'm really looking forward to meeting. And it's like, that little bit of like saying someone's name and making eye contact, even though their badge is there and you should be able to do that anyway, it does make a difference. It makes people feel important and welcome. So when you say, don't call them greeters, or maybe not the right term, I actually think that's a great way to handle it, because
Interesting.
that little touch of hospitality really makes a difference.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like it may be like greeter or usher or something to that effect. But so that's what the SDRs are there to do, is just sort of like give guidance. The AEs, where do they how much would you suggest they spend? 25% of their time? I'm just maybe a guess. 25% of
I
their
don't
time?
I would say that you put it well before. I don't know about a percentage per se, but
Yeah.
they're there for the scheduled meetings. Yes, if they're really excited to work a booth, which I have not met a lot of people in general that are excited to work a booth, give them a specific task in the space to let them feel like they're doing something, that they're accomplishing something, or being active. Because otherwise, you're going to have them just sitting there staring at their phone, or working on a laptop, or eating lunch. And I'll tell you, all three of those things, drive me insane. It's like, how many hundreds of thousands of dollars did you just spend on this space? And this guy is sitting here, or girl, sitting there looking at their phone. It's like, please just leave the booth to do those things.
Yeah.
So I think the most important part, if you are going to have honestly anybody in the booth, just give them a specific job to do.
Yeah. Nice. And actually, the thing that I also should ask is, there's a couple of things that have been part of my career. And so the one is, we would, building enablement. We would give this analogy of, you have to certify before you fly. So you have to certify to be on message. You have to certify to be understanding what we're doing, et cetera. And you had to go through a little bit of some enablement so that we had the right conversations and the right communication, and everybody was singing from the same song sheet, so to speak. So my question in here is, when you get into, before they actually go there, do you suggest to the company to say, look, before you send your AEs, your SDRs, here's a program, or build a program for them to understand what they're doing. And by the way, while they're there, give them the specific, like, do you have to lay that out for them? Or do most companies say, Jay, we got it. We know, we've done so many of these. Like, I guess it's also maybe a bit of a clue for somebody that's maybe going to their first event, or they're building their
Mhm.
first trade show. What should they be doing or thinking of with respect to exactly that? How do we make sure that the team is on message, on point, and then what are they going to be doing there?
No, I think you need an instruction manual, and maybe not call it that, because that sounds like you're treating them like babies. But the reality is, yeah, no, everybody needs an instruction manual. Like, again, going back to like, hey, this is why we're here. Here are some of the key people we want to meet. Here are some key competitors and where their booth might be stationed. If you want to, happen to leave our space and walk around and pull people over from that area, and you definitely want them to be very well aware of what you're doing at the show, what the space is built around. If there's some kind of engagement idea, so you can, you know, it gets other people excited. It's like, oh, look at this cool new thing we're doing in our space. And again, it's like, I heard this actually at GTM, and it was a former guest on your pod, JB. And he said, sales is really the transfer of enthusiasm. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, I heard that. I'm like, yeah, when I'm excited, like, there's nobody stopping me. I'm going to be out there. And it's like, get them excited to be there. So as much as I call it an instruction manual, yeah, you got to lay it out and tell them exactly why they're going to be there, what the goal of the company is, and all the cool things you might be involved in doing.
I agree with you, and I worked with this actually a long time ago, but he was an executive, and he said, he goes, Carl, I've never lost a deal that I was really excited about, but I have lost a deal that I didn't show any emotion or excitement towards. And so, but you're right, the translation, and Barrows is a really good one, right? Like, you talk to him and he's just oozing excitement. He loves talking
Yeah.
sales and everything that's going on right now. And that translation, yeah, I agree with you. And one of the things he also says is, it's content versus context, and sales has to be the context of the conversation. And so if you're excited about it, it comes out of you. And even, talking to you about events and watching your whole demeanor change, and like the excitement of, oh, and here's the experience, and you want to do this, and by the way, have you considered doing this? And I saw this really cool new thing that nobody's ever done locally that we could try. Like, you get so excited about it, and it draws people in with your enthusiasm, and it draws people in to be like, okay, what are you talking about? Because you could say the same thing in a really oh, I saw this person and they did this thing. Like, doesn't sound the same. But like, by the way, hold on. Like, I gotta tell you, I saw this thing and it blew my freaking mind. And they did this. What if we just did it like this for you? What do you
Hmm.
think? Like, it's the same. I just said the same thing, but two different ways. And I don't know, maybe I said it, I'm making myself convinced, but the second way I said, it's like, what do you did you what did you do? Tell me about the second one. Like, how did that go? What should we be doing?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's a conference I'm going to next week that I'm very excited about, and I probably have told you about it in the past. But it's the National Association of Convenience Stores. Doesn't sound exciting, but it's, walk into a 7-Eleven or a Wawa, which is, the local famous place here, and it's like you can get any brand that sells within one of those stores is at this conference, and I can get all of their snacks and candies, and like, yeah, I'm excited to meet the mascots. So it's like, yeah, you get excited if you enjoy it, and it's, obviously something you want to do in the first place.
So, total side note, and it wasn't even something I even thought I would talk about, but you said it. I actually got invited to go to a Chick-fil-A conference when I was
Do
working
it.
with BlackBerry. And it was before Chick-fil-A. Like, I didn't have Chick-fil-A in Canada. We have one here locally, and it's chaos to try to go there because it's sold out. But we went to the Chick-fil-A conference because they were using BlackBerries and they used Bez, and that was their communications methodology at that time. And to go to see the different like, you got to try the stuff. Like, they brought around, here's the new menu. You should try this new, and here's the new milkshake. And we're gonna try to this piece, or this is the new burger. Can you try it? What's your feedback? I'm like, this is being a former offensive lineman. It's like heaven. You're like, wait a second, I get to go to a show and they're feeding me such awesome stuff that I get
Yeah.
to say, oh, I like that. Or, you know what? I'm not really sure. Can I have another one? Because you really did like it.
Just wait till I
Anyway,
tell you about the National Restaurant Show, which is like, the best cocktail hour in the entire world.
really?
Oh my goodness, I love that show. Yeah, every May in Chicago, and you literally can try any type of food, beverage, whatever. Yeah, it's all there. It's the best.
Huh. See, now those are the experience for those that are in those industries. Okay, I go to the national convenience, I go to the national restaurants one, but I got to think that even for anybody listening, whatever trade show or whatever you went to, is there a moment? And maybe I'll ask it this way because leading into sort of what happens after you're at the event. What's the moment? And the moment, I mean, is like the moment that you remember. At Dreamforce, as an example, I got to see, Bruno Mars or Green Day, or pick whichever one, and there was a moment there. Or you go to one of the booths and they do just something unbelievable, and you're like, oh, I remember that.
Hmm.
How are like what's the moment? Is that something that you suggest to people? Like, because I think you said story before structure, I think is how you said it. So
Yeah.
are you trying to push to them to say, what's the moment that you want somebody to remember, so when they come back they go, oh my lord, do you remember this? That was I have to talk to them again.
It's funny the way you ask it. I like it better than the way I normally ask it. It's, what actions you want people to take afterwards, or what like piece of communications or messaging do you want them to remember. But yeah, it's really about the moments. And I'm going to go back to the book Unreasonable Hospitality, because he talked about, how he tracked every penny of the budget, 95% of the budget to the penny, but that last 5%, let's just do something crazy. Let's take that 5%, now spend it responsibly,
Mhm.
but at the same time maybe a little irresponsibly, and just do something that is going to be memorable. And he tells a whole story about, there was this four top that came in, and they had gone to every fine dining like mecca in New York City, but the only regret they had was that they didn't get a dirty water dog. And for anybody in the New York area, that's a hot dog off the street, which is like $1.50, or now it's probably $3 if I had to guess. I haven't gotten one in a long time. And so he literally overheard this. He ran out, he bought one, he brings it to his 3 Michelin star chef and goes, "Hey, just trust me on this." And this is not a 5% idea because it was obviously pretty cheap, but he like
Right.
literally plated a gourmet, a hot dog onto a gourmet plate, and they, made some accoutrements that made it look special. And like, that's the story that not only do I tell all the time from this book, but I can't even imagine like that group that had that experience, like they're never going to forget that. So think about, and you can't do this for everybody, but if you do have some big sales targets coming into your booth, do something special. Don't give them the same, song and dance that you give to everybody else. So yeah, and it goes back to your question, like asking people, what is that moment you can create that they will not forget anytime soon?
Yeah, that's I've not put it that way, but it's there's moments inside of a trade show or an event or something where you're like, I remember that. One of the things we did actually with Vidyard way back when is and to his credit, the CEO, we created these because we have VBot. So we put VBot, we had a costume made, and somebody was inside of it. I never had to go into it because it wouldn't fit. I was too big for it. So that worked in my favor. We actually couldn't get it over my shoulders. So it worked in that favor. But anyways, we had these plushies made, or stuffies made of the robot,
Hmm.
and people came, and that was like the bigger prize, and people came and they wanted it, and they scanned their badge and they talked to us and whatever. And when you called them after the show, they're like, "Oh, my kid loves the stuffy." And that was the moment. I think if I think back to them, is like that was the moment for many of these people that are like, "Oh, I remember spinning the wheel, or I remember winning this, or I have the stuffy. Hey, look, here it is." Like they actually like got really excited about it. And it was a different conversation because when you go to it, like you said earlier on, is don't just scan everybody's badge. It doesn't help you. There's not really
No.
anything that does. You get this collection of names, great, and then you do one mass email, and what happens? And maybe that's the thing to shift into is now that you finish the trade show, you come home, you've got all of this data. Do
I
you
hope.
help companies? What's that?
I said, I hope you have a whole bunch of
I
data.
hope, yes. Um, you have all of this data, or the company does. Do you advise them on what to do with it or how to do it, or is it left up to them? What's the experience for somebody working with you, and you talking about the experience you have in trade shows? How should they be thinking about what to do with that information?
So I think it's making sure, yeah. So I would say every company that ever scans a badge sends the generic post show, "Thanks for stopping by our space." And the same with like, "Hey, I hope you stop by booth 407." It's always that similar generic emails. But yeah, take that. And there's so many tools to be able to personalize based on just these little tokens that you drop into your CRM. So I would love for people to take that advice. It's like, yeah, personalize that message to them. Remind them of the conversation you had, the thing you did with them, rather than just send them that generic thing. Because again, and if they even follow up at all, speed matters. So having a email personalized to send out, you're not typically going to have thousands and thousands of leads. I hope you do, and I hope they're all qualified. But you should be able to personalize follow up for the people that are, those A leads or those hot leads out there, and making sure it matters and not just the generic follow up that everybody gets. And then you're on an email list for the rest of time, and you can never unsubscribe, because I could tell you, not speaking from personal experience there, obviously.
Yeah. Uh, so once I now, what's the alternative? Should I, at the end of every day, as a marketer or even as a salesperson, should I see what that list of people is and follow up with them that day? Speaking of speed, or do I wait till we get back to the office because during the event, you know what, the message likely is going to get lost because they're going here, or they're looking for information on where's the next party? Is there
Yeah.
any sort of clue or suggestion of how to handle that?
Yeah, I would typically say wait until after the event, because I don't know about you, but when I'm at an event, I am not very active looking at my email. It's usually when I fall behind by several hundred emails, it always feels like. So yeah, I think soon after the event, not if it ends on a Thursday, maybe it's Monday, maybe it's Friday, but I feel like
Mm.
Monday, Tuesday is typically the best time to follow up after an event. And yeah, it always depends on bandwidth, how many people you actually have on your team that you can get this done. So I think, like I said, speed definitely matters. Getting a list out and then you're doing it yourself makes it a little bit more challenging. But if you have a team of people, there's no excuse.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Excuse me.
Bless you. Maybe I'll ask one last question, and I just realized we've already been talking for 40 minutes, and we're going to run out of time for you, I'm sure.
I did tell you we were going to go over.
You were right, but it's been a fun conversation. What are the things that you suggest marketers track from a demand gen perspective? Are there certain ones that you said, "Hey, the traditional metrics, these are the core 5, but what else are you trying to measure?" If somebody's listening to this and they're just considering going to an event, or they're like, "You know what? I have to revamp my marketing strategy," or now that I get them, I come back, I got to change some things. What are the metrics you would suggest to them that they really hone in on to see if their event was a success or not?
So I think quality leads is certainly one. There's going to be two categories. You're going to have leads. You're going to see how many obviously people did come by and scan the booth, but then the people that have given you real information, actionable information to move forward on. So quality leads is definitely one. Yeah, and I think meetings held and demos held is definitely two metrics to look at, because you have these SDRs and BDRs pumping out these meetings for the event. Well, now we need to know how many of them actually come true. And I would say most importantly, pipeline generated, and or looking for the right word here, but you want to see how things are moving through the sales funnel. So if they come in, see where they're at in the funnel and see, did they progress, and kind of looking at what part of the touch point map or what part of the story did you have an influence on. So
Mm,
pipeline influence and pipeline generated, I think, are really important, because it's pretty rare that you're starting and closing a deal, and I'd say almost never on the show floor, especially we're talking to like enterprise level clients. We're not talking like this is a $10 widget that I'm selling on the show floor. Those you obviously would measure sales, but pipeline generated or pipeline influence, I think, is really important.
nice. Is there a magic number that you suggest people to think of? And I probably should have asked this before. There's two questions, so I'll ask the first one. Before I go to a trade show, is there a goal in mind of, I want you need to create 10x or 5x the pipeline for the spend? Is there a metric that you suggest, or the best companies in the world are thinking of?
I wish I had a good answer for you. I don't have that answer for you.
It's okay.
So, no, there's definitely a metric there. Off the top of my head, I don't have it, so I'm not even going to try making this one up. It's the second time today. Usually I
That's
just make up
okay.
stats and I don't even think twice about it.
I'm just genuinely curious, like, what are people do and then on the flip side is, once I do come back from the show, is there, in order for the show to make sense, do you look at it from a acquisition cost to, are you looking CAC LTV as an example for how to measure the success of the show? Is it pipeline? Is it generated? Is it whatever? Like, how do the marketers that are really, really strong on the demand gen side look at it and go, "Jay, you know what? We crushed this event because of," and whatever the blank is there. Is there something that you hear regularly of, like, we did the following, it was an either number of opportunities, it was the total value pipeline, it was maybe you go there from an awareness perspective. Is there anything that you maybe suggest or would tell somebody to think about?
Yeah, so I think at first it's really important to understand your conversion metrics in the first place, because if you are going with like, hey, we have this meeting, many meetings held, you'll know, well, every meeting we hold, 30% of those meetings become opportunities. You need to know those stats so you can
Mm,
speak that numbers game. I'll give two specific examples of metrics that CMOs brought to me that was like, one of them was actually like, the CEO told me, if this isn't a success, it's my job, because this is our most important lead gen event of the year, and that is a very common thing we hear. And for her, she specifically said we generated $27 million in pipeline at this one event, 3 days, 4 days, 3 days.
wow.
And the other one Same event, and it was all about meetings held. Their goal was 160 meetings. They ended up booking 225 meetings. We literally had to redesign portions of that booth 2 weeks before the show to accommodate all the meetings they had scheduled. We literally, this is one of my favorite creative, I'm not a creative, but this was my favorite creative moment of my career. We actually converted their reception counter into an optional meeting area where it had a bench pull out if you needed to sit down and like have an impromptu meeting. But
Wow.
yes, so to take it back a step, so yeah, for those two, it was pipeline generated, which is always, if you know your metrics, you'll understand how much pipeline you generated, and meetings held.
And actually, the other thing that I think I sort of led you to this a little bit, but to the conversation is, do you go? I think I've sort of come up with this notion in my mind. There are some events that I have to go to, right? Like I have to be there. All the competitors are at. There's some that I would like to go to because it's a new way of, and then there's some that it's like I'd like to try it. Uh,
Mhm.
do you when you talk to the customers, do you ask them of like, is this a need to go, a must go, or a I'd like to go? As I don't, maybe I'm not phrasing it correctly, but does that also dictate the success of the show?
100%. And there are actually quite a bit of people that will be like, hey, I just want to try this event. It's like, great. But even if you're just trying the event, it's like, well, what do you want to get? You have to have
Mm,
a benchmark of a goal. Even if you're just pulling it out of thin air, it's like, all right, we're going to this event for the first time. I want to get 15 qualified leads, which is obviously not a big number. But if you're trying the event, I would think it's typically smaller. Well, actually, that's not true. But yeah, I think there's definitely, no matter what the event is, if you have to go or you want to go or you're trying to go, that benchmark of like, all right, we still want to know why you're going and
yeah.
how we're going to figure out if it's worth going back again. Because we hear this all the time and it's everywhere. It's like, well, we've always gone here.
Mm,
And if you look at like Apple's, their developer days, or I don't remember what it's called anymore, they don't even show up to their own conference anymore. Or, CES, where Microsoft pulled out. It's like, yeah, we don't need to go here anymore. And
hmm,
CES is the biggest trade show in the world.
yeah.
170,000, well, pre-pandemic, 170,000 people used to go to that show. And like, yeah, now we're good. And that's the important question. And we do audit client event schedules. It's like, all right, let's figure it out. Like, let's literally go one by one. Why are you at all of these events? You have 200 events. Do you really need 200 events?
Hmm.
Because you
200
think about
events.
the investment you're making, it's like, yeah, you better know why you're going.
If you're going to 200 events, you must have a massive marketing event, marketing spend, and or have bought a booth that you can just transform from one place to the next. Because
Yeah.
if you're setting up your own booth every single time, that's got to be costly.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, and oftentimes it's the biggest marketing expense of the year is your event program.
Yeah. Wow. So I realize we're at 50 minutes. So let's maybe move to move to wrapping this one up. I say all the time, everybody likes new and nobody likes different. And when you do both at the same time, it can either cause friction or uncertainty. So for those companies that listen to this and they're thinking about their event strategy and go, you know what, I need to make a change. What are two or three actionable things that you would suggest for them to do on Monday morning to rethink their demand gen strategy as part of events? What would those things be?
Hmm. What would they change in their demand strategy for events? I mean, I would definitely look at how you are. So, sales and marketing alignment, I'm going to go another cliche thing that people talk about all the time, making sure you're aligned with sales, because as much as marketing is usually the driver of the event, making sure sales is getting what they want out of it as well, and having that conversation, and just aligning on goals, aligning on what you're doing, the messaging, and how the booth is set up. Oftentimes the salespeople or head of sales is brought in at the end, but bringing them in early in the planning process and making sure you're aligned from the beginning, it just, there's so much less friction that way.
Hmm, that's a good one. Um, if you can't tell from today's conversation, Jay loves this stuff. He's so freaking good at it. And so for those people that are like, hey, you know what? I gotta follow what Jay is doing, or I want to talk to him more. If somebody said, hey, I want to reach out to you and learn a little bit more about events, where would they find you?
All over LinkedIn. That is the only social media platform I use. I post there all the time. Sometimes it's nonsense. Sometimes it's, well, I would say mostly it's actionable event strategies and how you can improve yourself at events. And then, of course, it's, pictures of places I'm going and things I'm doing.
Yeah, he posts every day, and it's always something I'm like, "Ah, how is he doing all this?" But it's typically about an event or something to learn from. So he's a great follow, and if you can do it, it's a great one. Um, let's wrap up. And so let's say that wraps up another episode of the Revenue Problem Solvers. I want to thank Jay for sharing these incredibly invaluable insights today. And obviously, you can hear the strategy you can put into action. Remember that success leaves clues, and every revenue problem has a solution. Sometimes you just need the right conversation to find it. Until next time, it's Carl with the Revenue Problem Solvers, helping you turn obstacles into opportunities. Thank you for investing your time today, and see you on the next episode. Bye, everybody.